Howdy! Guess what? You're listening to Untold Tales from this side of nowhere. My name's Connor Jones, and I'm here, and you're here, and I think it's probably time for another story from that tiny town in the middle of nowhere, Poverty Flats. So, here we go. It's Untold Tales, everybody, and we're gonna get rolling right after a message from our sponsors. This week, our sponsor is Basin Pharmacy in Basin, Wyoming. Basin Pharmacy is your hometown pharmacy, as well as your source for over-the-counter medicine, vitamins, and supplements. They also carry office supplies, Russell Stover's chocolates, and greeting cards. The friendly folks at Basin Pharmacy are happy to help with any of your medicinal needs, whether you have a prescription to fill or a question about your meds. You can stop in Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturdays from 9 a.m. to noon. We are also sponsored by the Wyoming Welcome Program. The Wyoming Welcome Program offers two services to local businesses: Table Talk and the Wyoming Welcome Baskets. Wyoming Welcome Baskets are filled with promotional items for local businesses and distributed to new move-ins to the Bighorn Basin. Table Talk brochures include jokes, facts about the state of Wyoming, the month's holidays, and advertisements from our local businesses. These brochures are placed on restaurant tables in Cody and Powell for diners to peruse. So if you'd like to get your business name out there, please contact the folks at the Wyoming Welcome Program by shooting an email to Haley J, that's HALEYJ, at wyomingwelcome.com. Do you have a noxious weed problem? The team at 307 Pest Management can help. We offer residential and commercial noxious weed management that is safe and affordable. Whether you have a parking lot, a yard, or some production land that needs treated for noxious weeds, 307 Pest Management is ready to help get your weeds under control. Give them a call today for a free quote at 307-250-0614 or send an email to 307pestmanagement@gmail.com. As you probably know, during the summer, I work as a contractor spraying weeds for the Bighorn County Weed and Pest, and it involves a lot of hiking around the mountains and the hills of Bighorn County. We've spent a lot of time outside of Grable, hiking around there and spraying weeds, and we've been out to the Medicine Lodge archaeological site, and it has been a blast. We've found a lot of invasive species. I just can't believe how many invasive plants there are in Wyoming, but I think that is the case in most of the West. A lot of people who moved in to settle the West brought plants with them, and they push out native plants because their native predators did not come with them. In fact, Weed and Pest has started planting bugs to eat a specific kind of weed called hound's tongue. It comes from Asia, I believe, Russia, somewhere over there. And there's a bug that eats just hound's tongue. And it didn't come across the ocean with hound's tongue. However, Weed and Pest has paid a company in Switzerland to find this beetle that eats the hound's tongue only, and to make sure that it won't eat any of the other native plants over here. And they've isolated its diet down to hound's tongue, and they actually sent those beetles over, and they've been planted in different places around the state, and they are just eating this invasive species, and it's awesome. It's way more effective and in my opinion cost efficient than spraying the hound's tongue has been. And we're excited to see how it goes. It seems like they're going to do a good job of wiping out this invasive plant. So the invasive plant finally has its natural predator back here, and it's going to level the playing field for all of the native species that it's been pushing out. Pretty cool. But, anyways, all of the hiking around has brought back memories of hiking as a kid. And today's story is called The 20 Miler. Now, if you're not familiar with scouting, one of the requirements, well, one of the requirements to become an Eagle Scout is to get the hiking merit badge. And one of the requirements for the hiking merit badge is to hike 20 miles continuously in a single outing. So that's what this story is about. Here we go. At 7 a.m. sharp, our bleary-eyed mothers dropped us off at the American Legion, and we happily assembled around Scoutmaster Eli Lyman's now gleaming F-150. Apparently, cleaning his disgusting old hunting truck fulfilled some important requirement for the Automotive Maintenance Merit Badge, and we had spent Wednesday evening detailing the vehicle. There was still dirt caked under each of my fingernails from cleaning the single floor mat I had been assigned. Each of us scouts was equipped with a backpack containing a lunch, extra snacks, and a bottle of water. "All right, boys," Eli trumpeted, leaning against the door to his truck. "Does everyone have a lunch and at least 2 liters of water?" We all nodded in the affirmative. Jim stifled a yawn, and we all glared at him. "Sorry," he blurted out. "I was up late packing." "What do you mean?" Fred asked. "This isn't even an overnight hike." "That's right, boys. This ain't an overnight hike. Or at least if y'all can keep pace, it won't be. 20 miles is a fair distance, especially for little fellers like yourselves." A shiver of excitement ran down my spine. 20 miles! It was the longest hike we had ever attempted in a single day, and one of the major requirements for the hiking merit badge. We had come close to achieving the 20 miles on our last 50-miler, a week-long excursion that resulted in us covering 76 miles rather than the required 50. On day 1, we managed to slog through 18 miles of mountain terrain, and the memory still haunted some of the guys in the troop. But not me. Okay, maybe me. At age 12, I was of average height and weight, and no athlete, but growing up in rural Wyoming had given me the opportunity to develop some skills that came in handy in the outdoors. My various hunting and fishing trips with my dad had given me some insights into outdoor survival, and since HUNT was an acronym at our house that stood for Hike Until Nauseatingly Tired, I felt pretty prepared for this hike. But still, 20 miles was going to be a challenge, even for the most hardened Boy Scout among us. "This hike will be a challenge, even for the most hardened Boy Scout among us," crowed Scoutmaster Eli. "And I mean you, Jim," Eli said, jabbing a gnarled finger in my cousin Jim's direction. Jim was tall and wiry, and he was arguably the most experienced in the outdoors out of our troop of 4 scouts. I wasn't sure exactly what Eli meant by the most hardened Boy Scout, but it still hurt to have that designation passed to another. Oh well, I'm sure I was the most something in our troop. Maybe the most likely to die of heat exhaustion on this hike. "All right, enough chit-chat," Eli barked. "Everyone pile in." Jim and Marty raced to claim a spot in the cab of Eli's pickup, and Fred and I headed for the bed of the truck. "I'm not sure why they're in such a hurry to ride in the cab," Fred said as he hoisted himself over the edge of the truck bed, one foot planted on top of the truck's tire. "Eli's dog Scout is in there too." I settled down on the wheel well and looked through the back window of the truck to see Scout panting happily from his perch on Jim's lap. Scout was a sort of a heeler, collie, Australian shepherd mix. In other words, he was a mutt, like most of the dogs around Poverty Flats. Slightly less than scrupulous in his hygiene habits, I'm sure Scout didn't smell like a bouquet of wildflowers, and the pained expression on Jim's face bore evidence of this fact. Or maybe it was because Scout was digging his claws into Jim's right leg, or breathing directly into his face with hot puffs of dog breath scented with whatever dead thing Scout had most recently been chewing on. Either way, I was happy to be in the back of the truck. After about a 10-minute drive, Eli turned off the pavement and began bumping over a rutted red dirt road into the red hills to the south of Poverty Flats. Our teeth rattled in our heads as the F-150 clawed its ways over hills and through washes, and a layer of red dust had covered all the boys in the back by the time we ground to a halt on top of a large ridge. Off in the distance, the Bighorn Mountains jutted into the sky. A wisp of cloud hung above the arid landscape, which was punctuated by brightly colored hills and scattered sandstone. Sagebrush were placed here and there, managing to survive in the high desert of western Wyoming by a mixture of sheer grit and infrequent rain. "Well, this is where we begin," Eli called out as he climbed out of the truck. Scout shot out of the pickup and immediately began sniffing the nearest bush. Apparently, it passed inspection because he was quickly on to the next one. I clambered over the side of the truck bed, my water bottle banging against my back as I took the long step down from the tire. "And we have to hike the whole 20 miles?" Marty asked. "That seems like such a long way." A wicked grin slid across Eli's face. "Oh, come on," he chided. "It'll be fun. Look, Scout is having the time of his life." We looked over at Scout, who was standing next to a sagebrush with a hind leg raised. If that's what having the time of your life looked like, I didn't know if I wanted to have it. "Got your water?" Eli asked. "Yep," we chorused. "Got your snake-killing sticks?" Eli asked. "What?" Marty blurted out. "All right, let's roll," Eli growled happily, and he set off with his thumbs hooked in the straps of the ratty old backpack he had slung across his back. They say every journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step, and the same can be said of a 20-mile hike, I suppose. Marty's first step was not a great one. "Ouch!" Marty hollered, jumping back. "What? What's wrong?" I asked, looking at his pained expression. "I just stepped on a cactus," Marty said through gritted teeth. "This is going to be a long day," Eli sighed. The morning sun was climbing its way above the horizon as we plodded down the dusty road. The red hills formed a jagged line to the south, and the barren landscape could have been the set in an old western movie. Because we weren't going to spend the night, we didn't have to carry tents or cooking gear, but Eli had instructed us to carry extra water to help condition us for the 50-miler we would be hiking later in the summer. So Fred and I had 4 liters of water apiece in our backpacks. Still, we weren't packing nearly as much weight as we were accustomed to carrying on our scout outings. On an overnight hike, we could easily carry 20 or 30 pounds, and on the 50-miler, we would start with at least 40. "Geez, this sure beats backpacking, doesn't it?" Jim asked Fred as we walked side by side. "Sure does," Fred agreed. "Usually my pack weighs like 40 pounds, but this backpack has got to be less than 10. Jim and I shared a knowing look and hid our smiles. Little did Fred know he was carrying a little extra weight in the form of a sand rock Jim had balanced on top of Fred's backpack. Just to be sure, I dropped one strap of my own pack and checked for rocks. You can never trust your cousins. Scout scurried around us, sniffing everything that didn't move and chasing everything that did. I wondered, if I had 4 legs, would I have as much energy as Scout? He certainly seemed to have double the energy of any of us boys. It wasn't hot yet, and we made good time. The road sloped gently down into a small valley, and we moved at a good clip as we descended. I was struck again by the colorful hills around us. Some were just plain red, the way I pictured Mars, and some were banded with several different hues. I've seen pictures of Rainbow Mountain in Peru, and the hills south of Otto have just about as much color as those hills. But the difference is the hills in Wyoming have horizontal layers rather than the folded layers of the Peruvian hills. Still, I would pit the Wyoming hills against the Peruvian ones any day. To this day, they are among my most favorite geological features of the state. As we walked, we chatted about a variety of topics from past hikes to our plans for the summer to school. Eli talked about his outdoor exploits and even threw in a few true stories just to keep it interesting. Mostly we just walked, though, and walked some more. Eli, how far have we gone? Marty moaned. Eli unclipped his GPS from his belt and consulted the little screen. About 2.5 miles, he replied. What? Marty spluttered. 2.5 miles? We've been walking for hours. It's 8 o'clock, Marty, Jim observed. I've already eaten half my lunch, Marty complained. This is gonna take forever. Eli shook his head and clipped the GPS back on his belt. Quit your complaining, he growled. You're gonna be just fine. Now save your breath for hiking. Marty frowned and continued plodding along, his thumbs hooked through the straps of his red backpack. I could be playing Halo right now, Marty huffed, kicking at a rock. Don't worry, Marty, I said in an attempt to cheer up my friend. At the rate we're going, we'll be done in about 5 more hours. 5 hours? Marty wailed. Why didn't you guys tell me this was going to take all day? It is a 20-mile hike, Fred said. We've been planning this for weeks. It's a requirement for the hiking merit badge. Well, I don't want the dumb hiking merit badge, Marty huffed. Why couldn't we just sell popcorn like the other Boy Scout troop? He muttered, trudging stiffly along. If Marty wasn't having a good time, he was the only one. The morning was quickly developing into a beautiful June day in northwestern Wyoming. There wasn't a cloud in sight, and a gentle breeze promised to keep us relatively cool as we hiked. We passed dead trees and amazing rock formations. Every now and then, Scout spooked a rabbit and took off chasing it. By the time we reached the 10-mile halfway point, we were just getting into our stride. That is, except for Marty. You got any water, Al? Marty said, shaking his plastic water bottle over his mouth in an effort to extract any last drops. You already drank all yours? I said. Didn't you bring a gallon like Eli told you to? Yeah, but I dumped most of it out back there. I was sick of carrying it, and I didn't know this was going to take all day, Marty said defensively. So that's what you were doing when you said you needed to go to the bathroom, Jim said. Here, Marty, I haven't touched mine yet, Fred said, unshouldering his pack. Hey, who put rocks on my pack? Fred blurted out. Wasn't me, I said quickly. Rocks? What rocks? Jim said. What's the holdup, boys? Eli said. Oh, Marty needs a drink, Fred said, pulling a repurposed apple juice jug from his pack. Here, Marty. Thanks, Marty said, accepting the jug and twisting the lid off. I'm parched. Take all you want, Marty, Fred said. I'm getting a little tired of carrying it. Eli shook his head and sighed as Marty quaffed at least half a liter of Fred's water. I suppose this is as good a place as any for lunch, Eli said. We found a flat spot to sit and pulled our lunches from our packs. Fred and I munched on trail mix and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and Jim produced a rather flat turkey sandwich. All we had in our packs was water and lunch, and somehow our sandwiches had still managed to get flattened. Now it was really starting to get hot, and as we stood to continue the hike, Marty grumbled, I can't believe we're only halfway. For my part, I was feeling pretty good, but my legs were not responding to my instructions the way I would have hoped. Every step started to feel like a battle between me and my lower extremities. I could tell all of my fellow scouts were starting to feel the same way. The sun beat down on us as we plodded through the dirt back the way we had come. On many trips, the return journey often feels shorter, but for some reason it wasn't the case today. Maybe it was just the sheer length of the 20-miler, or perhaps it was the absence of even a breath of air as we made our way through the arid landscape. The rock formations that had seemed so unique and interesting before were now like old reruns of the same bad movie. Beside me, Fred's breathing came in gasps, and Jim's feet dragged. Even Scout had stopped chasing every bunny that emerged from the brush, and rather than taking off after them, he only tracked them with his eyes, as if he were saying, "Oh, I'll get him later." Marty was the worst. He kept up a constant barrage of complaints, hurling each one out with all the bitterness of an unrequited lover. I could be watching TV right now. I bet there's ice cream in the freezer. Why did I have to become a Boy Scout? I could have joined a chess club or something. Hush, Marty, I sighed. We're all tired. Woo-wee, Eli said, wiping sweat from his brow. It has gotten hot, hasn't it? I took another swig from my dwindling supply of water. At least the bottle was getting lighter. Need a drink, Marty? I asked. Thanks, he said, and swallowed several huge gulps from the bottle. As we paused for a break, we surveyed our surroundings. Still nothing but dirt hills, sagebrush, and the occasional prickly pear cactus. We're getting close, Eli said, nodding toward the ribbon of dirt road ahead of us. Just a couple more miles. Even as the hike drew to a close, Marty seemed to lose all the will to hike. For my part, a thrill of excitement at the prospect of finishing pushed me forward. I found renewed energy as I thought about the air-conditioned pickup and the cooler of ice-cold sodas Eli had promised us at the end of the hike. In spite of all Eli's prodding, Marty moved slower and slower, eventually reaching a glacial pace punctuated by frequent rests. Come on, Marty, he growled. It's gonna be dark by the time we finish if you don't pick up the pace. You can do this. I wish I had never been born, Marty wailed. It's not that bad, Fred called back over his shoulder. Marty had drifted to the rear of the pack and was now several yards behind us. I'm not going another step, Marty declared, stopping dead in his tracks. You guys can go get the truck and come pick me up. We all turned to look back at Marty. The rotund Boy Scout had his jaw set defiantly, his blue trucker ball cap pulled low over his eyes. His hand made fists on the straps of his backpack, and he glared at us as if daring anyone to make him take another step. Really, Marty? I asked. We're so close. If you don't finish this hike, you can't get the hiking merit badge. I don't care, he hollered. I'm so tired. And with that, he crumpled into a heap on the road and sat cross-legged in the dirt. Beside me, Eli was starting to roll up his shirt sleeves. One look at his expression told me in a few moments Marty was probably going to be moving, and quite possibly running. As it turns out, I was right, but not in the way I was thinking. Just when I thought Eli was going to give Marty a little medieval motivation, Jim called out from the top of the hill ahead of us. Hey guys, I can see the truck. Everyone's attention immediately turned to my cousin. You see the truck? Marty asked, and I detected a flicker of excitement in his voice. Yup, it's right over there, Jim said, pointing. He was nearly knocked off his feet, when a slightly chubby Boy Scout wearing a blue trucker hat went tearing past him. Dust swirled through the group, and as Jim regained his balance, it took him a moment to realize he had only just escaped getting run over by Marty. "Where the heck was that energy 2 minutes ago?" Eli asked in disbelief as we watched Marty's retreating figure. "Woohoo!" we whooped as the rest of us boys took off after Marty. Jim was right. The truck was now visible as we crested the hill, and it was downhill the rest of the way to ice-cold sodas. Not surprisingly, Marty's sprint didn't last long, but even as the rest of us boys and Scout passed him, he continued huffing and puffing down the trail, and when he finally reached the truck, he collapsed against a tire, completely spent. "Here, Marty," I said, holding out a can beaded with icy water droplets. "Have a root beer. You did it." "Indeed you did," Eli said as he walked up to the truck, his boots kicking up little clouds of dust. "Y'all did," he said, and then added under his breath, "even if I did have my doubts. Y'all will each be earning your hiking merit badge," he added with a grin. "All right! Woohoo!" we cheered and raised our cans of soda in celebration. Scout panted happily, and even Marty mustered the strength to lift his can of root beer over his head. "Now get in this truck and let's get home," Eli said, and offered a hand to Marty. "Thank goodness," Marty said as he struggled to his feet. "That really wasn't as hard as I thought it would be," he added as I opened the truck door. Eli shook his head and said, "Just get in the truck, Marty." Well, there you go. The 20-miler. Now, as an adult, 20 miles of hiking doesn't seem quite as daunting as it did when I was a kid, but that's still a long hike, and it is a requirement for the hiking merit badge. I do wish that we still did scouting at my church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But it doesn't mean we can't continue to have outdoor adventures with young men. And this summer, the Auto Ward over there in Auto is going to do a 50-mile hike, backpacking hiking trip. So that's awesome. I loved doing those 50-milers, and I loved just about everything about scouting. It really was awesome, and I learned a ton. All the boys in my family are Eagle Scouts. My little brother Camden was the last Eagle Scout in the Auto Ward. So shout out to Camden, by the way, and Tate. They've been working really hard spraying weeds with me this summer, and I'm really thankful for their help. So maybe they'll get a chance to listen to this one. If you do, guys, I'll see you on Monday for some more hiking. But it's been a pleasure sharing another story with you. You can find the link to sign up for our mailing list so you get notified every time a new episode drops on our Facebook page. It's a Google form that you can fill out, and I'll set you up with those weekly emails. You can also get in touch with me by emailing me at untoldtalesthepodcast@gmail.com or commenting on Facebook when this episode drops. As always, this has been another episode of Untold Tales from This Side of Nowhere, where we work twice as hard for half as much and still find time for the important things, like fishing. See you next time, folks.